All right, and welcome to the TSG Multimedia video podcast for June 1st. This is John sitting with
Dan.
And it's my parents' anniversary today, so happy anniversary, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, happy anniversary.
Right? And boy, this SD40-2 seems to be an ongoing thing with our podcast, Dan. What are we going to do with this thing today?
Well, we're going to do some more work on the body.
All right.
I did most of the major cutting, but there's a couple more things that need to be addressed. And I also found the right dynamic brake catch for this.
That's always good.
So we can take care of the fans on this part and get that going.
Okay. This
one here is the one that I took off the engine, and this is the older style that was in production up until, I don't know, about 1980 or so, I think is when they switched, and this may have been an option, but in any case, these are both Athearn parts, by the way. This is just off a different engine. The correct part for Santa Fe 5126 is this one, because it has this more bulged
I remembered you'd mentioned
thing on the side there.
Yeah.
And it also has a different style of exhaust hatch.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the one that we want to use for this engine. I do, however, want to replace the fans, so I'll work on that.
Okay.
So I'm going to start by drilling some pilot holes in the center, just like I did on the radiator fans. It's just to get something started that's a little easier to control. Next, I'm going to drill some slightly larger holes.
This seems awfully familiar.
Yeah, it's the same exact process I used before.
So just drill bigger and bigger holes and then cut it out with the motor tool?
Right.
And then file it and smooth it and all that stuff?
Right.
Fun.
This little thing here is actually a separate part. I'm going to use that, but I'm going to take it off for now so I don't accidentally damage it.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah.
Putting sharp things near all this, I could see where that could happen.
Yeah, so I'm just going to set that aside. So this time I'm going to use a step drill. This will drill progressively bigger holes the further you press. This also cuts really nice, so it's less likely to scar the plastic.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons I like to work real slowly when doing this, because I don't want to ruin the part.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a drill bit like this before.
Yeah, they're kind of cool.
Man, that thing made short work of me in those holes, Dan.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And they do a pretty good job, because like a conventional drill bit sometimes will, the way that it cuts the plastic, it'll sometimes wrap it around.
Yeah.
And sometimes if the part's not really secure, it'll tear it or something,
Yeah.
So you got to be really careful. It's a more gentle cutting action. So even if you're using it at higher RPMs, it won't melt it so much. So the holes are a little off center, but that's okay. But then finish it up with the motor tool.
Right.
Just like I did.
Clean it up.
Right. But at least there's less cutting with this thing than there would be otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got the holes roughly cut out now. And this is the Canon dynamic brake fan set that I'm going to use. This is number 1853. It includes parts for 2 fans, which is exactly what we need for an SD unit.
Perfect.
Now, in order to fit these, what I will usually do is cut out one of these fan bases. This is the base part here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fan blades, the grill, and then this is the upper part. And we'll put all this together later, but what I do right now is just cut out one of these bases, and then I can test fit it in these holes.
Oh, I see, to make sure the holes are the right size.
Right, because I think last time, or previous time when I was doing the radiator fans, I talked about how the fans that I'm using for the radiator, since they're Q fans, they just sit on top of the roof. But these actually have to recess into the holes.
Yeah.
So they have to be cut a little bit more precisely. If you can see the edge of the fan here, you'll see that it has a flange running around the middle.
That little lip thing?
Yeah. So that flange needs to sit on the roof, and then the bottom part sticks into the hole.
Right.
So I still have to trim these up some more, but I'm just doing a little test fit, and they don't go in. So I need to make these holes a little bigger.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Yeah.
Either one of them it won't fit, huh?
Yeah, they're both a little too small. That's fine. That's actually what I want. You don't want them to be too big, because then you have real problems.
Yeah.
So now I'm just going to use a file and go very slowly and just keep expanding the holes until the fan fits.
Oh, so this is one of those file it, test, file, test,
Right.
file, test. Yeah.
Which on the magic of YouTube will get done in a real hurry, but in reality takes a little while.
Yeah, great.
I left the cast-on fan base on for now, and you can kind of use that as a guide when you're filing. So I'll eventually trim that off, but right now it kind of lets me know how far I should go.
Yeah, so if it disappears on one side, you've cut a little too much.
Right. You want to ideally be a little smaller than the cast-on fan base because it's probably the same size as the Canon part.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that it's not, again, you don't want to make the hole too big. Okay, so I've filed them, and now the fan fits in.
Yep.
Goes all the way down.
Yeah, I remember this from the weathering and detailing diesel locomotives video.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Did the same thing. So now I just have to trim off this fan base part.
What are you going to use for that?
I am going to use my X-Acto knife with a chisel blade.
Yeah, but you're going to sand it too, aren't you?
I will, but I'm going to start it with the chisel blade.
Yeah.
Just very carefully carve it off. All right, so I've pretty much cut most of that off. And I need to sand it a little bit to smooth it out. But before I do that, I'm going to mask off the sides here because there's rivet detail here.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to sand that off by accident.
Right. So I'm just going to use this blue tape. Same way if you were going to paint this. And this should help protect it while I'm doing some sanding. Another thing I noticed is that there's little tiny indentations where holes need to be drilled for lift rings.
Okay.
So I'm going to drill those first before I risk obliterating them by sanding.
Yeah, because if it's just a little nub and you sand it off, you'll have no idea where the indentation was.
Right. So now I'm just going to start sanding. I have a piece of 320 grit paper wrapped around a little piece of styrene to use as a sanding block.
A standing block.
Yeah.
Yeah, just got to be careful and slow, huh?
Yeah. And I don't need to sand too much because a lot of this is going to get covered by the Canon fan base anyway. So this is just to even it out, really.
Yeah, you don't want the base to be wobbly.
Right. Now I can put the fan bases in.
Don't they go a certain direction or something like?
Yeah, they go so that one set of supports points to the left side of the engine. I'm not sure why that is, but that's what the instructions say to do. They don't really show that much once the fan blades are on anyway. One thing that I do like to pay attention to, though, and it's kind of hard to see, but there are little bolts cast into the fan base around the edge, and only one support has the two bolts evenly spaced around it. The other ones don't. So I put the one with the evenly spaced bolts on the left. And that's so that all of the bolts around it will be even. Because otherwise, if you line it up with one of these pointed the right way, the bolt pattern will be off.
Yeah.
And that's something you might notice, once the fans are all together.
Yeah, you made that same observation in the weathering and detailing locomotives video.
Right. So once I get these all, situated exactly how I want, then I can glue them in with some liquid styrene cement. So I've glued the fan bases in the holes. And that's as much as I'm going to do on the fans for now.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of other stuff to do, and I don't want to assemble the rest of the parts until later.
Oh, you might knock stuff off, huh?
Right. Plus, it's better to paint the engine with the fans like this, because otherwise it's really hard to get paint in here.
Oh, because it'll be covered by all the covers and everything.
Right.
Jeez. Yeah.
One thing I will do, though, is there's some little molding seams on the side here. So I'm going to sand those a little bit. Get rid of some of those raised lines that shouldn't be there. Okay, so I've sanded that a little bit. And just a couple little spots up here. So I'm just going to set this assembly aside for now and come back to it later when I'm ready to do some more detailing on it. But I don't want to do too much right now because there's still a risk of damaging things. So last time I put some putty on the sides of the body because I was filling in the holes for the mounting lugs that I'm not using.
Yeah.
And also a little spot here where I carved a little too much away from the shell. So I'm going to go ahead and sand that now. I'll start with 320 grit and then work my way down to 400.
This is the opposite side from before, isn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to do the same thing to both sides. I've sanded these little splices that I put in down. But if you notice, the sill is thicker here and thinner here. Don't ignore this.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Okay, well, a couple of things about this. One, the transition shouldn't be an abrupt kind of a rectangular shape. It should actually be angled, and it should occur more like here, like right at the edge of this.
Wow. So what, are you going to file that too?
Yeah, I'm going to reshape that little area.
Yeah, nobody will ever see that, will they?
I will.
I should know that. I should know the answer to that question before I ask it.
Yeah. So I just have to do it very carefully with cutting and filing.
Oh, boy. Yeah, and don't cut yourself.
Right.
It's kind of hard to see, but
yeah.
I know where you did it.
Yeah, so anyway, I made a little cut and did some filing so that the sill transition is a little more of an angle.
Right.
And
it's more tapered now.
Yeah, and I did that at basically all four places where it changes.
Mm-hmm. So wherever those white tab things are?
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to do is I've noticed on the reel unit that the sill dips down again under the emergency fuel cutoff switch.
Okay.
So I've got this little strip of 020 by 020 styrene. I'm going to cut a little piece of that and glue it on here, and then taper the ends of that too.
With a file?
Well, I'll probably taper it with a knife. Actually, it's a little easier to carve it.
All right.
So this is it.
Yep, there it is.
I cut that to about 1 3/4 scale feet, and then glued it on with some liquid styrene cement, and then just trimmed the ends with a knife so they have a slight taper.
Yep.
And I did that on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, this is stuff that, unless you're just really scrutinizing the crap out of the pictures, I don't even know how you see this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are sitting there wondering, why does he bother, or why not just go buy something or whatever. But, to me, this is the hobby. It's about building stuff. It's about
I guess it is.
Doing things. It's the journey,
Builders build models.
Right.
So
it's the journey, not the destination. So anyway.
Keep telling yourself that, Dan.
Yeah, right. Okay, so one thing, unfortunately, I noticed is that this grill here has a little chunk taken out of the corner.
Oh, it's fortunate you noticed it, not unfortunate.
Yeah, well, it's good I noticed it before I did anything else. Now, normally, I would leave these alone because these are actually the correct grills for this particular engine. However, I'm going to replace them, and Canon, fortunately, makes a part for this.
Yeah, that's a good thing, because I don't know how else you would fix it.
Yeah, it'd be really difficult to try to putty it or something because of the shape and all those little, serrations and everything in there. So what I'm going to have to do is just cut these off, sand it down flat, and then glue the new part on.
Oh, all right. Just more stuff.
Yeah. This is Canon part 1304. And after looking at this and the one that's on it, I realized they're pretty much identical. So I think I can get away with just replacing the damaged one on this side.
Yeah.
And leave the other side alone, because it's so similar. I really don't see any point in replacing both of them.
Yeah, you're probably the only one, and me. Well, and everybody watching now.
Yeah.
Who will know.
This is the same technique you'd use, though, and I have done this with other engines. If the style of grill needs to be changed, because sometimes even as the engines get shopped, they'll swap one style for another.
Oh, well,
so
there you go.
If you needed to do that, this is kind of the procedure you'd have to follow. As you can see, I put some blue tape on here to hopefully keep from messing up any part of the body.
Yeah, just be careful and slow, huh?
Yeah.
Well, now it really needs to be replaced.
Yeah. No going back now. All right, so I've ground down and then sanded off the old grill, and now it's just a nice flat spot, and now I'll just be able to glue the new one on right there.
Looks pretty straight.
Yeah. One thing that works pretty well is to look down the end of the locomotive like this way, and compare these grills which are molded on to this grill and see if it looks straight with those.
Right.
Kind of the same technique you'd use if you're trying to lay a long straight piece of track. You just look down it. Works pretty well.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So anyway, that's probably a good stopping point for this podcast.
Oh.
And we can pick it up again next time, maybe.
Okay. In that case, I guess that'll do it for this video podcast. We will be back in July, on July 1st, with probably this locomotive again, or I don't know. I guess if something else comes up between now and then, we'll do that. But this is moving right along, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, then we'll catch you then. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks.